If you're buying a home right now, there's a really good chance you're about to make a $10,000 mistake and not even realize it. And I see this all the time. A buyer comes in, they've got some extra cash, maybe $10,000, $20,000, and their instinct is to put as much of it as possible into the down payment because it feels right. Lower loan, lower payment, safer decision. But what I want to show you today is this: that instinct, while it sounds logical, can actually cost you flexibility and, in some cases, put you in a worse financial position. So, let me walk you through how I look at this with my clients. Let me start with why almost everyone thinks this is the right move. Because honestly, it's how most of us were taught: pay down debt, put more into the house, be conservative. Maybe your parents told you that. Maybe you've read it online. Or maybe it just feels like the responsible thing to do. And on the surface, it is. There's nothing wrong with putting more money down. But what I always tell my clients is this: just because something is safe doesn't mean it's optimal. And that's where the conversation changes. Because I'm not just looking at one decision in isolation, I'm looking at your entire financial picture. So let's break this down in a simple way. Let's say you're deciding whether to put an extra $10,000 into your down payment. What most people expect is that their monthly payment is going to drop in a meaningful way. But in many cases, it doesn't move the needle nearly as much as you'd think. We're talking about a relatively small change in your monthly payment, sometimes much smaller than expected. Now compare that to what that same $10,000 represents somewhere else. That's liquidity. That's flexibility. That's your ability to handle the unexpected or take advantage of an opportunity. And once that money goes into the house, it's not easily accessible. So now the conversation shifts from how do I lower my payment by a small amount to how do I put myself in the strongest overall position. Let me give you a couple real world examples of how this plays out. I had a client recently who came in with that exact mindset. Art, I want to put as much down as possible. And we walked through the numbers together. What we realized was the impact on their payment wasn't significant, but holding on to some of that cash gave them something much more valuable: peace of mind. Another situation I see pretty often: a buyer stretches to put more money down, and then a few months after closing, something comes up: repair, unexpected expense, life, and now they're tight. And that's what I work really hard to help people avoid, because buying a home shouldn't leave you feeling financially boxed in. It should feel like a step forward, not a step that creates stress. So here's how I approach this with my clients. Instead of asking, how much can we put down? I ask, what's the smartest way to use your money? Because sometimes that money might be better used to buy down your interest rate. Sometimes it's better to keep it as reserves. Sometimes it's better to clean up other areas of your financial picture. But the point is, there's no one size fits all answer. And the right move depends on you, your goals, your timeline, your comfort level. That's where experience and strategy really matter. And this is something I talk through with clients all the time. So I wanted to share a quick, real example of how this conversation actually plays out.
Down payment. Let's talk about that for a minute. First thing to know is you don't need a 20% down payment. First-time home buyer can get a loan with as little as 3% down for a conventional conforming, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac type loan. You don't have to be a first-time home buyer, and you can get a FHA loan with only 3.5% down. So that's the first thing to know. Now, recently I was working with prospective buyers. I had to pre-qualify them at the request of their agent. And so I gave them some numbers, some worksheets based on different loan scenarios with a minimal down payment, a 3% down conventional and a 3.5% down FHA. When they saw the numbers, they were a little bit concerned about the monthly payment. And so they were inquiring about what could they do to get that payment lower. And their immediate thought was to put more money down. They did have some additional cash available. They were hoping not to use that. But once they saw the payments that would be involved with a minimal 3 or 3.5% down, they wanted to see what they could do to make them lower. So that they, in their mind, were thinking the best approach obviously must be to put more money down. And so what I pointed out to them is that, yes, that is a very common perception of prospective home buyers, first-time home buyers in particular, but it's a little bit not quite accurate in terms of the actual effect. And let me give you an example. And I tell folks this all the time. When it comes to providing a down payment, understand that as you put more money down, will the payment get better? Yes, it will. But the effect of the additional money down is not as significant as you might otherwise think. And the basic idea is, it's the rule of thumb that I tell folks all the time. Each $1,000 borrowed is about $6 a month. So if you're, in this case, these prospective first-time home buyers, in their mind thinking, well, wait a minute, 3% down, my payment's a little bit high. What if we put more down? And they had suggested, what if we put $10,000 more down? Well, and of course, in their mind, they thought, well, that's going to save me a couple $100, right? Well, I had to point out to them, no, not quite right. That extra $10,000 is only going to reduce their monthly payment by about $60 a month. Again, $6 per thousand. So they were disappointed to see that. And so my approach then was to point out that when it comes to trying to get as low a payment as possible, they and their agent need to work toward potentially preparing and submitting an offer where they're going to request a seller concession, but you don't do it off the price. Instead, take that seller concession as a seller credit in dollars, and then we can use that to significantly lower the interest rate, and of course, as a result, the monthly payment as well. And so I was able to show them and demonstrate to them that concept by providing another worksheet where instead we kept the down payment at a minimum. We assumed a certain amount of concession that they were going to negotiate, a seller credit. And then I showed them how I would use that to reduce the interest rate significantly, in fact, by more than 1%. And when they saw that, kind of a light went off in their head and they realized, aha, that's a much more effective way to get your payment down than using more of our cash with a larger down payment. And so as a consequence, that's the process they're going through now to try to get an offer accepted by using or requesting and getting that seller concession to lower the rate and their payment. So always think of that as the best way to lower your payment. It's not about down payment. It will help, but the amount of help is limited. You're much better off to negotiate those seller concessions to get that payment down at a level you're going to be comfortable with. Thank you.
So here's the bottom line. Putting more money down isn't wrong, but it's not always the smartest move either. And the difference comes down to having a strategy. Because what I want for my clients is simple. I want you walking into your new home, not just excited, but confident. Confident in your payment, confident in your reserves, confident that you made a decision that actually works for your situation. If you're thinking about buying or even just exploring your options, this is exactly the kind of conversation we should be having. Because sometimes the smartest move isn't the most obvious one. I want to thank you for joining me on this sometimes difficult and confusing topic. How much money down is really to my best advantage? I invite you to contact me, Art Alvarez, at 760-969-5023, and let's use my 4.5 decades of creating thousands of loans for people just like you discussing this very thing. Thank you again for spending time with me on this week's Mortgage Minute. I look forward to speaking with you soon.